Thank you for joining us on the Ultimate Leadership Podcast. And here's your host, Chris Cebollero.
Well, I got to tell you, it's a great day to be joining us on the Ultimate Leadership Podcast. And I'm your host, Chris Cebollero. You know, when we think about who we are as leaders and what we do in business, you know, adversity is one of those things that really kind of hits everybody. And it's one of those things we don't really want to deal with, right? We don't want to deal with that disruption. We don't want to deal with having to go over those hurdles. You know, we want a kind of vanilla life. We want things to kind of move in the right direction. But sometimes there's those potholes, and sometimes there's those hurdles, and sometimes there's those challenges, and sometimes we've got to deal with them. But what happens when the adversity is really too much for even us to consider? And maybe we're looking for an easy way out. I got to tell you, I am so excited to bring our next guest in here. He is the author of The Gift of Adversity. And I have to tell you, even before we bring him in for introduction, I was gifted this book before we had this interview. And, you know, one of the things that I wanted to do, and as an author, you know, you sit down and you just want to get the flavor for another author. And I said, you know, I got errands to do. Let me go ahead and just read. I just want to get the flavor for this author. And 100 pages later, almost 2 hours later, I realized that I was into the book and I forgot about the time. And that's what this great story is going to give us. And I got to tell you, I'm very excited to bring our guest in here. He is the author of The Gift of Adversity, Marcus Aurelius Anderson. I want to thank you for joining us on the Ultimate Leadership Podcast.
Wow, Chris, that's a tremendous introduction, and I appreciate that. Thank you, my friend.
No,
I'm happy to be here.
I mean, I'm like a kid at Christmas, and you know, we got Christmas coming up. I'm a kid at Christmas because when you talk about the gift of adversity, Marcus, I got to tell you, you truly gave me a gift in reading. You know, I've completed the book now, but the initial reading gave me just the feeling of my life isn't that bad. The things I got going on aren't that bad. I've got to pick my pants up and I got to start moving forward. And I got to tell you, that gift of adversity that you're given, I took and I felt it, and I got to thank you. And I'm very honored to interview you and share your story with the listeners.
Thank you, Chris. I'm so glad that you enjoyed it. I'm so glad that you got so much out of it. I put my heart and soul into that book, and to hear that it took you the way it did is the biggest compliment that I could get from a person like you.
Now, a lot of people may not know the story, and I know that we're going to get there, but I kind of want to take you through this process to kind of share it with the audience. So first off, I'm going to kind of lay a little bit of foundation. You know, you're a patriotic man. You decided to join the military. You wanted to serve your country. You wanted to, you know, be the best fighting man that you could be. You know, from your book, it says that you had, you know, incredible scores. You could have had any job that you wanted in the Army, but you wanted to be in the infantry, which I think is crazy. Right now, I'm going to tell you, you are the gift of adversity, but you are crazy. But I got to tell you, man, I think that goes to your character. But let me just ask you that first question is, why the infantry? Why? I mean, you could have been an Apache pilot. You could have been anything that you wanted to be in the Army, but you wanted to be in the infantry. What was that about?
At 38 years old, when I went in to go in to the recruiter, he said the same thing. He was like, "You're crazy. Why are you doing this?" The big motivation for me was my great uncle was in Vietnam, and he was a huge male role model for me when I was growing up, and he passed away not long before I made that decision. So remembering so much of the things I learned from him, and almost as a way to honor him, I wanted to join the military and do what he was doing. He was in special forces, so the closest thing to that would be going into the infantry and then getting qualified to do, you know, airborne or infantry rangers or any of that kind of stuff. So that was my path. And again, the recruiter kept telling me, he says, you know, you can do anything. And I said, okay, then I'll do infantry. He's like, no, you don't get it. You can do anything. And I said, if I don't do this, then I'm going to walk out the door right now. He signed the release and said, okay, it's your life, man. And here we are.
Yeah, I mean, very, very cool, and a nod to you, because the infantry is a tough job to do. But so now as you're going through your training, and you want to go to combat. I mean, the purpose of you doing this at 38 years old was you wanted to get into the thick of defending, and you wanted to be able to support your country, and you wanted to be able to go into combat. And during your training, you started to feel maybe uneasy. You started to feel a little uncomfortable. And having been a veteran of the Air Force, I had the opportunity to go to air assault school at Fort Ord. I had the opportunity to go to jump school at Fort Benning. These are tough guys. And when you start to feel a little bit of uncomfortable uneasiness, you're not necessarily bringing that up in front of everybody. But you started to feel some uncomfortableness. You started to feel some uneasiness. And then that led to some big adversity. And why don't you go ahead and take us through that?
Yeah, especially in the military, the whole idea of almost a stoic mentality of, hey, what you're going to do, you have to embrace the suck. It's going to hurt. It's going to suck. It's going to be uncomfortable. So that became the norm. So pushing that away, while it may not necessarily sound healthy to some people, that's what you have to do because you're preparing to deploy. You have something to get done. But like you said, this uneasiness was something that would not go away. It would begin, and I would start to feel numbness in my hands and my feet, but I attributed that to the cold weather. And then I would feel this, my body wouldn't respond quickly as I would normally like it to. But I was like, well, I'm 38. Well, I'm almost 40 at that point. I'm in the infantry. Of course, this is going to be rough on my body. So I got to give it some time to recover. And then things kind of turned quickly for me.
Yeah, we're talking about, it could be anything, shin splints, bone spurs, stress fractures. These guys are really working hard, but it was a little bit more than that, wasn't it, Marcus? So, and you tell the story that, you're waking up the next day or you're waking up one day and you realize that you're paralyzed and you cannot move. Take us through that, and what did they find out?
Yeah, the worst fear that I had in my life was to be paralyzed. I remember having dreams as a child, being afraid of something, trying to run, and being paralyzed, not even being able to scream. So waking up that morning and trying to roll out of bed and having my neck move a little bit, but the rest of my body not move, I was scared to death. I was in chiropractic school before that, and I quickly did an eval on my body to see what was going on, and everything that I knew was pointing in the direction that this is a neurological problem, and this is permanent. This is paralysis. Luckily, I had some people beating on the door that were going to be there soon, so that was pretty fortuitous for my situation.
Yeah. Now, when you think about this whole process, I don't even know what I would have thought at that time. I think your body goes into 100 different directions, but basically, you went to the clinic, you went to the doc, and they said they got to do a little bit of surgery. You were like, what the heck is going on here? And that surgery kind of lasted a little bit longer than they thought it was going to be. But the end result was, as you were recovering, and I'll let you kind of give us that background, the doctor was saying, I don't know that you're ever going to walk again. And it truly became real to you that I may be paralyzed and I may need to get ready to be paralyzed for life.
Yeah, they rushed me down to the hospital. It looked like a scene out of, a movie. They got me in there and they took an MRI, had a disc rupture in my neck, and that's what was paralyzing me. So they said, okay, well, let's get you prepped for surgery. And in my mind, I'm like, well, I hope they get this done quick because I have to go deploy soon, because you have that warrior mindset. Once they got me down there and they got me in, the surgery lasted, a lifetime, because I found out after the fact that I'd been injured pretty badly whenever they did the operation. And I came back, the doctor said, well, we lost you there a few times. And I didn't know what he was talking about. And he said, no, you were gone. You were flatlined twice. So you lived to tell the tale, which was great. And then he says, but you need to wrap your head around the idea that you are not going to walk again. You're not going to use your hands again. And that was a pretty big slap in the face at the time, as you can imagine.
Yeah, and as you bring that up, I actually forgot that point of you flatlining twice, which is, being in my core of who I am, Marcus, being a paramedic. When people, when their heart stops, the challenge is to get that back as fast as you can. And the times that we have to do that, sometimes that doesn't happen. So it's truly amazing and truly a gift that I get to chat with you. Now, as you now start to go through this process of being paralyzed, it was pretty desperate for you. I remember, and I had to actually read the passage a couple times, that you even got to the point of thinking about committing suicide.
I absolutely did. The worst part about it was there's nothing I could have done about that. I couldn't even actualize that because of my position. You have to think about all the things that we're grateful for when you're in situations like that. And, the first one is, well, I'm alive. But in my mind, being alive and being paralyzed was not really a life that was just simply existing. and then the realization that I may be like this for the next 40 years of my life, that's pretty sobering as well.
So now, I mean, we've given despair, we've given adversity, but the magic here is that you are able to walk now, and you are able to live a functioning life, and good thing that you didn't decide to take your own life by your own hand. But I really want to kind of bring us to, and as we get into the lessons here, and I think that that's next, but take the listeners through the work that you did, because I remember there was one passage where you talked about my toe moved, and I realized that there was some hope here. So take us through the hope, take us through the process where you started to regain your feeling and eventually have to learn to walk again. And then I want to explore with you, this journey and the lessons of the gift of adversity.
Of course, I was very angry, as you can imagine. Anger pushed inward is the definition of depression. And being in that situation, I was angry at everybody that walked into my room. I was angry at anybody that would interact with me. But I was most angry at myself because I realized how much time I had wasted in my life doing stuff I didn't want to do. Eventually, I got to the point where I wanted to commit suicide, and I realized that I could not go against this. This was something bigger and stronger than me. It was almost like spitting into the ocean and expecting it to change. And once I kind of gave into it and I said, okay, there's got to be something here for me to learn. There has to be a lesson for me, and I'm missing it. I don't know what it is. And finally, I just decided, okay, wherever this is going, I'm going to turn with it. I'm going to go with it. Once I started seeing my adversity as a gift instead of a curse, about a week later, I started getting some movement in my left hand and my left finger, and in my toe, and I was, incredibly happy and excited about that. So once that happened, I was able to lay that as a cornerstone to build other things on and start to recover.
And how long was that process? I mean, so when you think about from the surgery to the realization, and then finally, and even today, as we talked before we started the recording, you're not at 100%, but to a point where you were able now to function again. I mean, how long did that take you to get to that point?
It was 3 months in before anything moved on me. Then it was until the following year, almost an entire year, before I was able to at least move a little bit and walk. So I was able to learn to walk. I was on a walker. I still wore, a neck brace and stuff like that just to make sure that everything was good. And then, eventually they discharged me. And even when I was out initially as a civilian, there was still a lot of time where I still had to work to occupational kind of therapy and stuff to make sure I could actually function in society. So.
Yeah, and I know that those are the simplest things that we take for granted were the hardest things that you had to do, and that's very, very painful, very, very trying, skills that you have to do. So, but like we said, the good news is now you're able to move forward. And the reason that you and I got hooked up was I saw your TED Talk, which I thought was amazing. We'll put your TED Talk in the show notes so people can check it out and kind of be part of that. You're a motivational speaker. You kind of talked about the gift of adversity. So let's get to the crux of why we're here. So now, when I think about trying to make ends meet, when I think about employee satisfaction, when I think about productivity, those aren't adversity. You're talking about life-changing things that kind of put you into a path of wanting to end your own life. So when we think about now this gift of adversity, and I guess the first question I have to ask you is, why did it become important for you to write this book and share this story?
I felt that my experience was so unique that somebody had to hear it. And even if I can write the book or tell the talk and get at least one person to overcome their own adversity or to have a more positive idea about their situation, then I've done my job. Doing that was something that helped me also in a cathartic manner where it allowed me to create closure there so I can move forward with my life. So I'm able to serve other people in that manner, and I'm able to give other people hope in the process.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that coming from a therapy standpoint, but I think you're absolutely right. So now as you go around and you talk about the gift of adversity, and I had the opportunity to read the book, and I got to tell you, there may be some I dog-eared a couple of pages. I may quote you on a couple of things, but I guess the people who read your book, what is it, and I love to ask this question of authors, What do you hope they get out of it?
I hope that it feels like I give them a big hug, and I also light a big fire underneath them. I hope they understand that they can do anything that they want to do if they work towards it, but it's not going to happen overnight, and it's not going to just knock on your door and land in your lap like it's on a silver platter. A lot of this, in this arena that I'm in, there's a lot of people that have either this attitude of you can work really, really hard and that's what gets everything done, or you can just think really good thoughts. But it's actually both of those areas dovetailed. You can work as hard as you want at a $10 an hour job and you're not going to be successful. You can think really great thoughts, but if you're not willing to put in the work and put in the determined amount of discipline, you're not going to get there either. So it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, and I have to tell you, I mean, I think that there were just so many lessons here. But as I read it, because I slowed way down after the initial reading to try to take in the message, and it made me kind of reflect on my own life as well, and some of the things that I thought were bad things that happened, and how I handled them, and maybe how would I have handled them differently. So I guess my next question for you, Marcus, is what was the biggest lessons that you took out of this that caused you to change your life and really want to, be on the motivational end of sharing this message?
In my TEDx talk, there's a couple of things I talk about, and then of course I expand on that in the book. But the biggest things is I just want to point out that no matter how bad the situation is, and I was in a pretty bad situation, there are other people that are in worse positions, and that if we look at it, we can usually find something good out of it, even if it's an example of what not to do. So by being grateful for what we do have and understanding that we are very lucky just to be able to speak the way that we are, or to have electricity or clean water or food, that's a lot better than what a lot of the other people are doing here in the world today. So by being grateful for what you have, that gives you the opportunity to continue to get better at what you're trying to accomplish in the long run.
And I think that there's a lot of great insight in that comment. But I think that now as we start to think about moving forward, and I want to be respectful of your time, and I got to tell you, you've got to promise that you'll come back, that we can have more discussion about the adversity and how we overcome that. But I think that the next thing that I want to, kind of hit you with is the people who are out there listening, and that they may feel that there's despair, and they may feel that there's challenges, and they may feel that there's obstacles. If you could talk to them and you could kind of touch them and give them some inspiration and motivation, what do you share with them?
The biggest thing I tell them is that, there's nothing that's worth having until you pay a price. And you and I both have tremendous reserves of strength and knowledge that we will never reach unless we are spurred on by adversity in some capacity. As human nature, we want to be comfortable. We don't want to have to move. We don't want to have to do much of anything. But in order to get to a point where we can actually actualize this potential, we have to have something push us forward. And sometimes the adversity may be something as simple as the resistance, like Pressfield discusses in The War of Art, or it may be something as difficult as what I faced. But without the correct mindset before you face adversity, it's easy to get victimized, and it will paralyze you. And I don't mean that as like a pun. It will stop you. So you have to have this made up mind that, you know what, I can get through this. Other people have gotten through worse than this. And by doing that, that's what's going to make you get stronger. It's the catalyst that makes you raise your game and get better at what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and I think that's easy to say, though, man. When you say we've got to have the right mindset, I think that's just that's the tea bag in the water that makes the solution good. But how do you really put yourself in a position to get your head right, to move past that adversity?
So we'll talk about leadership. We'll use that as an example. If you have a customer, or if you have a client, or if you have an employee and they're unhappy, or if there's a situation that's occurred where we don't really like what's going on, this is the adversity. So if we try to avoid it and just walk around it, it's not going to help us. This is the learning opportunity. So let's figure out, well, what did the customer not like about my service? Was it the price point? Was it the quality that I provided? Was it the fact that I didn't give them a timely, whatever it was? The same thing with the employee, the same thing with whatever the product is. So adversity is opportunity if we look at it in that light. But if we look at it as something that we want to try to avoid, we will never face it and try to get beyond that point. Anything that we want, like I say, it takes some hard work to get there. So whether it be becoming a paramedic like yourself, becoming an incredible podcast host, you have to have all those things to get there. And until you encounter those things, you're never going to reach up high enough to be able to do that correctly.
Man, you said it. I wrote it down. Adversity is opportunity, and that'll be another quote that I'll use in my keynote addresses when it comes to that point. So Marcus, I think that there's a lot of great things. People need to go out and give the gift of adversity this holiday season. But, there's a lot of people that may want to learn more about you. There's people that may want to engage with you. There's people that may want you to come and speak at their events. If folks want to get in touch with you, what's the best way that they can do that?
Absolutely. They can find me at my name, MarcusAureliusAnderson.com. That's all one word. My TEDx talk, The Gift of Adversity, is on YouTube. It's also at my website. You can find me on social media at LinkedIn, Marcus Aurelius Anderson, the same handle for Instagram, the same handle for Facebook, and the same handle for Twitter.
And that's amazing. And if folks want to get the book, how do they get their hands on it?
They go to Amazon, and they can get it right there on Amazon. They just look up The Gift of Adversity or put in Marcus Aurelius Anderson. As you know, it's a black cover, and it's got a picture of me standing sort of as a testament to what I was able to overcome.
Very dapper picture, too, by the way. That's a GQ picture, Marcus, right there.
Yeah, the photographer makes me look a lot better than I actually do. Her name's Rachel Williams, and she is tremendous. She did all the portraits, and she also did the cover art as well, so kudos to her. She's phenomenal.
I got to tell you, man, this is a book I probably read, a second time. And when you start to think about adversity and the challenges that we have and the hurdles that we come across, we really have to be able to be strong to get over those things. Adversity is going to happen. And people always say that they're strong. But you don't know how strong you are until your back's against the wall, until you're in your bed and you're paralyzed from the neck down, and you don't know how strong that you have to be so you can get over that adversity. I got to tell you, I truly love this book. The Gift of Adversity was an awesome experience for me. It gave me motivation. There was a couple places that I even got a couple goosebumps. But I'll tell you what, now that we're into the holiday season, this is the great name, The Gift of Adversity. This is an awesome stocking stuffer. It's something that is not going to cost you a lot of money, but it's truly going to give the people in your life the opportunity to have the gift of adversity and understand how to overcome. So consider that as a gift for the folks that are in your life, whether they're leaders or not. I think they're going to get something out of it. And I got to tell you, man, I want to thank you for joining us once again on the Ultimate Leadership Podcast, and I look forward to chatting with everyone again real soon.
Thank you for joining us. The Ultimate Leadership Podcast is a production of ChrisSaballero.com. You can interact with us by email at ultimateleadership16@gmail.com. All rights reserved.